This is my project, Pulley Minis, as you remember. Since last time you saw them, they have learned a few tricks. So first I'm gonna explain a little bit what they're doing and why they look like they look like, and etc. So on the green side, wow, that genius lawyer. We have like the detail look on it. On the top we see the figure-oriented, with the like initial orientation you can have. The red squares denote, so each of the little squares that make up a Pulley Mini can have traits of different sorts. These traits give the Pulley Mini the ability to move around or to sense its environment. The red squares mean the dude can actually move vertically. The blue squares mean horizontally, and the green squares mean the guy has more speed. Speed is measured in a tick-based system, so the dudes can move once per second if they don't have any trait, like any green traits, twice per second if they have one, 3 times per second if they have 2, and that's, I think it's up to 4 times per second in this simulation. Beneath it, there's a representation of the neural network that controls the Pulley Mini. So it's a multi-layer perceptron kind of neural network. In your case, your leftmost layer, this one right here would be the input layer. So the information they are getting is set for most of the simulations in this case. The first input is X position, the second is Y position, the third one is the orientation. So as you see, as it rotates, it changes. And the last one is if its last movement was successful or not. That way they can know if they're colliding with something. And so yeah, with all these, you can create small scenarios and have them go through them and then rate them, depending on how well they did in each scenario, and then they go through a genetic algorithm loop where they get reproduced if they were good, or not reproduced if they were bad. So this is just a pretty simple showcase where they can do whatever they want. As you can see, they actually, and the line of text in the bottom is a representation of its genome. So in that thing, both the figure, like the shape of the Pulley Mini and its traits are encoded, and the brain is passed from mother to son each time. It doesn't get like split up and reconfigured for the son. It's just that if the new Pulley Mini, when it's born, the new brain doesn't really fit him, I will create new neurons until it fits. So it will create new brains. So I have some scenarios I want to show with you. So this case, it's a really simple scenario. The only the task that Pulley Mini has is just to be as far as possible from the center, pretty much. So it starts in the center and then it gets more points the further it ends up after a fixed number of updates. In this case, so the guy actually is pretty good. He maximizes his points by going to the corner, which is the maximum. Something really interesting in this case is that the Pulley Minis is starting memorizing the map instead of actually learning, like to collide with stuff and then move. We can see this because if you pay attention, the last 2 inputs never change, even though the guy is moving. So it's only taking into account its X and Y. So it pretty much just learned the map and then just does the same thing over and over because it was easier for it given the type of map we have. And yeah, as you can see, it also evolves the minimum amount of actuators it needs for this problem. It only has one to move horizontally and one to move vertically. That's all it needs, and the moment the algorithm finds it, it tries to stay simple, because more complicated things are harder to convey as a genetic. Like when you're passing on genes, it's harder to convey more complex behavior than simpler ones. However, sometimes simpler behaviors won't just do. So in this case, where we have like a maze, this guy is using both memory from the map layout and also it's testing the scenario. So every now and then we're going to see this one beep. That means it's colliding with something, and then it changes its behavior. So it will go all the way to the right, and then sometimes it collides, and then it will go down because it kind of remembers that's a good strategy. But sometimes it will just go down because it's encoded in its brain, and it will just do it because it remembers how the scenario, like, it will pick up pieces from brains from its predecessors that kind of did okay, and he's just trying to do slightly better. And so yeah, questions so far? It's either really good or really bad. Okay, so a few other scenarios I tested, like in this one they will get points the faster they get to the end. So they evolve it to be like long racing dudes. Something really fun is, so there's a lot of things here. One, they evolved as many speed bonus they could evolve because it was good for them. And also, if you see there's a little like white dot here, that means where the creature starts. So the layout of the squares is also encoded in the genome. So starting from there, it will like start placing the other squares. So as you can see, it's actually starting to evolve towards the right because those guys get placed on their 0. So if they're longer, they will get to the end faster. So they actually started to evolve to the right because that gives them a slight advantage. And the reason why it's not longer, like just a huge line, is because creating that kind of like chain is hard in the sense of like it requires like a lot of specific genes to be one after the other, so it's harder to happen. But at least we can see that they're tending towards something. And even though they have been training in a pretty similar scenario, sometimes they will take into account the Y and weight it incorrectly. So if they start in the wrong point, they will have no idea what to do. So yeah, they're not super smart. And then using this same scenario, I just added a bunch of like rubble, and I used the same individual. So I just pretty much grabbed the previous guys and put them in this scenario, and they kind of devolved or evolved slightly differently. They became smaller because the bigger they are, the more probable it is that they collide and the less points they get. So they actually got rid of the little fin they had. They started evolving more efficient squares. I don't know if it's, probably it's kind of obvious, the difference between these three colors. So the green one is just speed, the blue one is just movement, and the one in the center means you get speed and movement. So it's more efficient, but it's harder to find in the sense of like creating that gene. So these guys realized that is a better investment of the genetic material than the little fin the other guys had. And yeah, it's been a super interesting experiment. I know it's not like a game per se, but there's a lot of like interaction potential in this, and there's a lot of work that can still go into it. So I wish I can spend some more time with it, but that's pretty much it for me. Questions?
Can you talk more about the genomes?
Sure. Anything specific or?
Just like how it's set up and how does it determine like what to evolve and stuff like that.
Okay. So yeah, I can give. Oh yes, I can give you some detail on that. So here's just the representation. This is actually a base 64 encoding of the whole actual like byte array it has. So getting into the details, each square uses 2 bytes for encoding. The first nibble, or the first 4 bits, are for adjacency information. So like each bit represents one of the sides. So if I want something on top, I have the first bit. If I have like one on top and one on the bottom, it's first and second and stuff like that. That makes sense? And then we have like a library of possible possible traits you can evolve. So that is like when you create a scenario, you have like a descriptor of all the traits you can have, and then it loads it and stuff. And it just pretty much creates the byte string, and then there's a parser that goes through it and creates these using the library of traits. And each trait just tells the parser like for me I need to have there's more information there. So the first nibble is for adjacency, and then the next 2 nibbles are for traits. And then to create like complex traits, you need to chain nibbles. So it's like you have it's like a little like resource tree or like leveling up tree kind of thing, where you have 3 tiers. The lowest tier will be like just using 1 nibble. The second tier will require the first nibble to be in a really specific pattern, and then we will use also the second nibble. And then for the tiered tiers, you have to have the first nibble in a pattern, the second nibble in a pattern, and the third nibble, we will use it as the index. So that way we can have like, the more complex traits, like this one that's giving you 2 things, it's a tier 2 thing, it's a tier 2 nibble. So that's why it's harder to find, because you will need to align your genome to something really specific.
how does that create the graph down there?
The neural network?
Yeah.
So this one is not encoded here. This one is just passed from, it's always one of the patterns, pass the whole brain to the child, and then the child will adapt the brain to its new figure. Because the figure that it's formed is part mother, part father. So it will create like the new figure, and then the brain might fit or might not fit, because if you have more actuators and you have layers in your output, networks in your output layer, you will need to like adapt it. And also there are some scenarios, I didn't showcase here because it wasn't so interesting, but there are some scenarios that you can get new sensors, so it will be the same. If you have more sensors, you will need to adapt your network. And also the hidden layer can grow or shrink each generation. Like actually your hidden layer is an average of the size of your parent and your mother's hidden layer. So even though the weight and the input and output layer are just as your mother's, the inner layer can change. And that's it. Anything else?
If I wanted to learn more about this, what would I Google?
I will recommend Carl Sim's Virtual Creatures. He actually did pretty much this, but in 3D way better. That's really a really good way to start. Also, Craig Reynolds, the guy that wrote a lot about stream behaviors, he did some experiments with the voids, but using, I actually was trying to reproduce one of his experiments where he did like neural network trained voids using, to play the game of tag. So they would like follow each other and tag and then try to evade. I tried to reproduce that. It's a little bit more complicated with just two dimensions. They get a little, they don't really like try to find the other every time, so it's a little weird. But yeah, those two papers were like my basis for all this, and then you can just follow the references and find a lot of stuff. Or you can shoot me anymore. I'd love to talk about this more.
Cool, thanks.
Right.
I'm just curious, these are all translation moves, right? The ones that you did the rotation, how does that consider into your neural network? When do they rotate them? Like,
Oh, okay, perfect. That's a really good question, actually. Let me see. And the only guy that is rotating a lot is probably really hard to read because he has like the hugest brain. But so these output layers is each one of these represent one of the actuators. So after the neural network loop completes, whatever is here is going to be applied to each one of these. And if it's so, what it has a really simple like physics manager that if you push these guys will push up if the value is positive or down if the value is negative, and the same for the horizontal ones. And then just depending on how far you are from the center, you apply a little bit of torque. So if like these guys are pushing up and this guy is pushing that way, you will rotate. If they're like neutralizing each other, you will move normally. And if yeah, that's pretty much it. And in general, if for normal movement, it will try to just grab the highest of impulses, and for the other one, it will just calculate the torque. But it's like a pretty simple thing. Right? Thanks, guys.